Welcome to Haken, an Animal Crossing podcast, your podcast dedicated to all things Animal Crossing. Episode 100 is brought to you by Waffles, Verity, Lyalatron, Madeline Hawkins, Emily, Cathario, Kiwi, Emerok, Grizzly Nina, Samshine, Emily with two E's, Agatha, Zekin, Sugar Poof, Annie of Pine Tree, Leto Jager, Satan herself, Nernip, Fraser Connell, and Brian Bender, patrons who have been extremely generous and raised their pledge above $1. Today, Sergio and I are joined by an incredibly special guest. She is the co-director of the Video Game History Foundation, co-owner of Pink Gorilla, and all-around awesome Animal Crossing fan, Kelsey Lewin. So to begin, hi Kelsey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And of course, Sergio, how are you doing?
Hey Chewy, I'm doing quite well. September is almost over. Where did it go?
Yeah, well, now you just let everybody in on the secret. We're recording this way earlier than usual, which is okay. We managed to find a time to get you in, Kelsey, and I'm so excited. I've been wanting you on the show for a long time. So
I was actually a little confused why you hadn't asked me yet, but I didn't want to impose. I was like, he follows me on Twitter. He knows I'm a big Animal Crossing fan. Wonder if he's ever going to ask me to be on the show. So I'm very, very honored to be on episode 100.
Well, I was very happy and honored as well to know that you listened to some of our episodes and were actually interested. So it's a big deal for me, for sure. But yeah, I guess most of the reason I hadn't asked you yet was just because I wanted episode 100 to be a very special guest, and I thought you are a very awesome person to have on the show for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I guess just a little background. I remember, when I started this podcast a while ago, mostly because I felt like nobody was talking about Animal Crossing. And to be fair, there wasn't really a reason to when we started it like 2 years ago. But as somebody who started it, it was mostly because I was just like, man, I really wish there was something out there Animal Crossing related to watch or anything. And so during that time, I also kind of found your stuff and all of the cool like history things, your collection of Animal Crossing stuff. So that's kind of how I found you, essentially.
Yeah, I think I have a video where I talk about my Animal Crossing collection, and I did a video on my own channel that's some fun facts about Animal Crossing that you probably don't know because they're from some interviews I had translated, so unless you speak Japanese and have some Japanese magazines at your disposal, I think it's all new information.
Yeah, and that's what I really liked about it too, because it was literally stuff because I look stuff up all the time and I'm like, I actually did not know any of these things. These are really great.
I love researching. That's my favorite. So
yeah, we're going to get into that. I'm really excited about that. But before we do, let's actually start with your history with Animal Crossing. And I guess I like to get a background of everybody and where they started playing the game and everything. So when did you first play Animal Crossing?
So I got the game for Christmas in, I want to say 2004. So it was about a year after the game had come out in America. And I didn't know anything about the game, which is funny because I had a subscription to Game Informer at the time. It's not like I was completely not paying attention. I loved my GameCube. But I literally just saw the box at an EB Games, which, dating myself here, but at an EB Games, and I just thought it looked so cute and interesting. I had liked Harvest Moon, and I was like, oh, this looks, I like animals. I like that sort of style of game. So I put it on my Christmas list and forgot about it, and then got it for Christmas, and we were actually out of town for Christmas that year, so I just had to read the manual and stare at it for a few days until I got to be home with my GameCube. But yeah, so I started with the first one. I've been a huge fan ever since. A extreme fan that stands outside of the doors of GameStop before the game releases and goes to all the midnight launches and stuff. So
Yeah, that really takes me back, especially like being out of town during that time of year and getting a present that the payoff is not immediate at
Yeah.
that point. But even like, I don't know, growing up, now I'm mostly digital, I will say, but I do remember growing up, getting a game, and then just like opening the box in the car, reading every single piece of information in the little booklet, and that just getting more and more pumped to get home and play a game. So
those are always the
yeah.
longest car rides where you're just like staring at the manual, staring at the box. You're like, come on, gotta get home to my game system.
Yeah, that's true. It just feels like you're never gonna get home. Yeah. So I guess like what made you fall in love with the series like once you started playing it?
Well, I think it came to me at like exactly the perfect time in my life because I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. I was kind of like, preteen age. And I was the oldest child in my family, but I had some older cousins. And I just really was really, really fixated on appearing mature. And like I was not cool with being a 10, 11-year-old. Like I really wanted to just grow up fast. And so the game was like, hey, look, you're the boss. You got your own house. You can design stuff however you want. And I think that really spoke to me at that age specifically, where I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in charge now. Like I can make decisions and people are going to listen to me and care what I have to say. Not, I was just a kid, right? So that was what really made me fall in love with it. Of course, I loved, the music. I loved meeting all of my neighbors and feeling like there was a real, friendship and connection there. I think the game did such a good job of making you feel like this was a real place that actually mattered. And, every time you go into this world, of course, it's a video game. And even at 10, I wasn't, I knew they weren't real or anything, but it made you care. It made you care about the town you lived in and your relationships with everyone else. So that's sort of what made me fall in love. It was almost instant. I loved the game basically as soon as I started it.
Yeah, and it does such a good job of doing that, especially for people at that age too. It's just like you get so used to all of the rules, all of the stuff you have to do, going to school and everything. Not that it's like, I guess, more busy than being an adult or anything.
Sure, but when you're a kid, you don't have that like baseline to compare it to. So yeah, you feel like, oh, cool, I can, the rules, of course, are perfectly fair in the real world. It makes sense. You got to go to school. But when you're 10, you don't feel that way. And yeah, it makes you a lot more appreciative of a world that kind of lets you do what you want to do.
Yeah, and I feel like Sergio, you relate to that too, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, because KK Slider, he just opens up with telling you how it is. He's like, you got this place. It's just for you. You can do whatever you want,
Right.
Yeah. So I guess you've played all of them. Which has kind of like been the most influential on you? Which mainline game has been your favorite?
So 3 of them are favorites for different reasons. The only one that I'll say for sure is not my favorite is City Folk. But I would say the most influential one for sure was Wild World for me, the DS one. So I was actually a moderator of a pretty big Animal Crossing site at the time. And I spent all my time on that site. And, because it was the first time you could really open up and do Wi-Fi and start really connecting with people all over the world. It was the perfect environment to be kind of in an internet community for. And it was still like, not super young internet, but younger internet when we were all still posting on forums and like doing IRC chats and stuff, way before Discord and what it's turned into now. So, it was a really good environment to just start meeting people from all around the world and of all different walks of life and just being able to share kind of your own little brand of what you want your life to be with these people. So I loved inviting people over to my town and showing them my house. And, also I was like 13, 14 years old, and I really liked having the power of being a moderator. I felt important, like an important person in the Animal Crossing community, which I realize now is like probably not something you want in a moderator, is someone who feels powerful, but
Yeah.
I was young. Give me a break.
Yeah, and it kind of, it fulfills that same thing where Animal Crossing was that essential place that you can call your own and do your own thing. And then also that forum was your place where you're like, man, I'm the boss of people here too.
I don't think I was unfair, but I was also, a teenager, and
Yeah. You make fresh decisions and you
Yeah.
learn from them at all points. So I get that. So how do you feel, I guess, about like the spin-off titles in the games? I guess essentially every game we've gotten post New Leaf.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've had so many spin-offs in a row. And I think, I think it was time for Animal Crossing to have spin-offs, certainly. Like, pretty much every other major Nintendo franchise has, several different types of spin-offs. So,
Right.
even though, most people don't like Amiibo Festival, and Pocket Camp has certainly some mixed feelings from people, I I agree with them existing. I think it's a good idea for the Animal Crossing series to have these spin-off titles. I will say Happy Home Designer is excellent. I had a ton of fun with that game. It's really just kind of, it's not Animal Crossing, but it's sort of the pieces of Animal Crossing that, like, if you don't want to have to do any of the work, or go through the whole learning to exist in this town and build things slowly, and you just want to make pretty houses, which I get it. Sometimes you just want to make pretty houses. I think that one was really fun. I actually bought this book. It's like almost 600 pages. It's a Japanese guidebook for Happy Home Designer. We have
Oh.
an import bookstore here in Seattle, near me, and they were selling this book, and I picked it up, and it's enormous. It's a huge book. But what they have in there is they have room inspiration for every single villager in the game.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So it's super cool, because it's just so much design inspiration all in one spot in a book, and all Animal Crossing related. I mean, there's like tons of design inspiration books for like the real world, for your actual house and your actual apartment, and and that sort of thing. But I thought it was really cool that they made this giant book just for this game, just so that you could have a bunch of ideas for designing all these rooms.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was going to say, that sounds like 600 pages. That sounds like they made something for every single villager.
Yeah, literally every single villager, and then there's some other stuff in there too, like, just general guidebook stuff, like how to play the game, but it's all in Japanese, so I'm mostly looking at the pretty pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always nice to have good Animal Crossing pictures in your life.
Yeah.
So okay, a little follow-up on that. Like, how did you feel about like Amiibo Festival and Pocket Camp?
I I joke, I play Pocket Camp every single day. I've never missed an event. I've never missed a piece of furniture that you didn't have to pay leaf tickets for. But most of the time, I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm like, I kind of hate this. Why am I still playing this? I don't hate it, but it's a mobile game. It's got a lot of like very predictable and repetitive things to it. I think a lot of people have talked about how it's kind of predatory with just how much the fortune cookies cost and that sort of thing. Although that being said, I got 2 5-star items in a row these last 2 days, which is nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, right? That's never, I mean, I've definitely not been lucky before in this game, but I got the tree trunk for the Maples autumn cookie, and then I got the oh gosh, what is it called? The big shrine thing from the, you know what I'm talking about? The big red shrine. Oh gosh,
Is
I'm gonna
it
have to
from
fire my
the? I feel like that one's from the. What's that ostrich's name?
Yeah, is it? It's not Gladys. She had the other Japanese-inspired one, right?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah. I know which one you're talking
Yeah.
about. I can't think of their name. But I'm really jealous because I want that tree trunk thing.
Yeah, it was completely unexpected, and of course both of those came when I wasn't actually like purchasing them, and I've spent quite a bit of money on this game purchasing fortune cookies, so I don't hate the game. I think there's some really, really good furniture in it. Like, just some of the most well-designed, most interesting stuff that they've ever had is in this game for sure, and I hope a lot of it appears again in New Horizons. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly it can be kind of predatory sometimes.
Yeah, I've made my fair share of complaints of how much things cost in that game, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same. I've missed a lot of things because I think last summer I took a lot of time off of the game, but once I got back on, I've kept playing and gotten most things. Every once in a while I'll skip an item or two where I'm just like, I don't really need that one. But I do play enough where I'm like, oh, I'll give them some money. So
yeah, I mean, I've been playing this game since it came out, so I'm not like against the idea of spending money on mobile games for sure. But I do think that when you have both something that's a lottery system and you're paying for it, and you have no control over whether or not you get doubles and that sort of thing. I spent, I think, probably $15 on the on Goldie's cookie, the one that had the little like all the books and stuff in the trees.
Yeah.
I really wanted one of those trees. I spent $15, did not get a single tree, but I did get 4 pairs of glasses.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that didn't feel good.
Yeah. I did the same thing with that one. I don't remember if I spent money back, but I did use like every leaf ticket I had, and I think I got 2 of those trees. And then recently, when because it's been reissued for the past week, and I got just one of the free 5,000 bell cookies, and I got a tree from one of those, and I was like, yes, this is the greatest day. Yeah, and it's a bummer because that one's just like a 3-star item, and you're like, it should just be coming out.
Yeah, I know. I got 2 of the like pack of 5s or whatever. I can't remember, but I spent some actual money trying to get one of those stupid trees and still didn't get one. So, and I'm not spending any more money on that, even though I know they just reissued it in the game. But I can't spend any more money on that stupid cookie.
That's how they get you. So, do you have a favorite like special character or villager?
Yeah, my favorite villager is Midge, the pink bird. And I actually had a custom amiibo of her made for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever seen DIY Crossing. They do stream on Twitch sometimes. So I was finally able to snag, they have like super limited spots. They make like 4 custom amiibos a month or something like that. But I was finally able to snag one and got a really, really cute Midge amiibo, which now sits proudly on my desk. But yeah, so that's my favorite villager, which is funny because she wasn't really in any of my original towns. I would say my favorite that was in an original town for me is probably Puck, the penguin. He was in my very first town, and so he still kind of holds a special place in my heart. But I just really like birds. I like all the bird villagers.
Yeah, that's right. I've been looking at your profile pic with your bird kind of hanging off of your headset.
Yeah, he's currently locked in the other room so he doesn't squawk on the podcast. So
yeah, that's how my birds are. I have a couple parakeets. So
do you?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I'm super jealous because I've been trying to snag one of those DIY Crossing amiibo for I don't know how long now, but they are very limited, and that's really cool that you got one.
I think I have tweet alerts set up for them, and then I also set an alarm for myself on the day, like on the day and the time they're going live. And I think they're in like the UK or something like that, so it's like an awkward time of day to do it, but that's what I had to do to get one. So there's your pro tip: is tweet alerts and setting alarms for yourself.
Yeah, I'll have to do that because I do get like notified because I followed them on Twitch, and so I get notified whenever they're streaming, and I'm like, oh, that was 5 a.m. for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, one day I want to catch one of their, for me, early morning streams. All right, and then I guess what is your fondest memory of playing Animal Crossing?
Oh gosh, this is such a hard one because, I've just been playing for so many years and through so many games. I would say that the best times to me were probably playing Animal Crossing Wild World and having people from all over the world hanging out in my town. One thing I do in every town I've ever made, and I don't really know why, is I make a coffee shop in my main floor is decorated to be like a coffee shop, which was very hard to do in the first game, by the way. There was no coffee items, like no coffee cup items or anything like that. So I had to get kind of creative. There was a tea set item, and that was the closest thing I could use. But so I really liked the idea of being like, hey guys, come on over and have coffee over in my town. And of course, as early as Wild World, there was an actual coffee shop, but whatever. I still wanted to make mine because Brewster existed. But so yeah, my fondest memories were having people from the community and kind of all over the place come over and just sitting in my house, and we'd be talking. Usually we'd be talking over IRC instead of the in-game stuff, just because it's kind of hard to type
right.
with the stylus. But yeah, hanging out and just seeing each other's towns, that's to me like some of the coolest moments in Animal Crossing is showing people what it is that your town is all about, and then seeing what their town's all about and what kind of things that they prioritize and like and want to show off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really awesome, especially because like not a lot of people really recognize how big Animal Crossing is for online, because it was like Nintendo's second game that had online or something. It was very early on.
It was pretty early. There wasn't a whole lot of there certainly wasn't a whole lot of games where you were like sharing something with people. There were, things where you could be sort of competing and that sort of thing, but this was a different feeling than most online games where, even in like an MMO or something like that, you're usually like just doing a fight together or something, doing a quest together, or you're playing online with someone in a game like Counter-Strike or something and you're just shooting each other. So this is one where it's like, no, come on over. Like, I want to show you some stuff.
Yeah. It's the first show and tell over the internet, essentially. Cool. Well, that's really awesome. I really like hearing your background with the game and everything, and especially because you have like such a huge collection of things, and we have some questions about that a little later on. But let's move into talking about Pink Gorilla, which is a store that you co-own. And Sergio, I think you had a story regarding Pink Gorilla.
Yeah, I do. It sounded really familiar when I heard the name. So I looked it up. I noticed that it was in the Seattle area up in Washington. And at that point I realized, okay, this cannot be a coincidence, because I knew of a store called Pink Godzilla that was in there. And it turns out that was the same store, but just before, I believe around 2009, we changed to Pink Gorilla.
Yeah, I think I thought it was 2008, but you know what? I don't actually I don't want to swear by that. So that's exactly right. So the store's been around for almost 15 years now. Nice. I obviously have not owned it for 15 years because I'm 25. So I took over the store with my fiance. We were both managers there. We had been managers there for 3 or 4 years. In 2016 was when we took over. So it's been a little over 3 years now. And it's been Pink Gorilla the entire time I've known it. They changed the name fairly early on, but yeah, same store. So that's cool that you've been there.
Yeah, it looked awesome. I remember ordering a game from them too. I lived in the area for about a year, and it was a great place, yes.
Yeah, definitely around that time, there was a really big focus in the store on import stuff, and we still focus on import stuff a lot, but there was a lot more like ordering brand new import stuff, because that was a lot harder to do back then. Nowadays you can like just go to Amazon Japan and order it straight to your house, but you couldn't do that back in 2006. So
I'm
Um,
learning so much. I did not know you lived in Seattle for a little bit, Sergio. Well, that's really cool. I guess, how did you like get started working there?
So I moved to Seattle in 2012 to go to college at the University of Washington, and I had seen the store before because I'd visited Seattle a couple times when I was, figuring out where I wanted to go to college. I'm from Texas, so I was pretty far away from home.
Oh,
um, and I just really liked the store. I saw they were hiring, and I was like, okay, I got to get a job here. So I did. I applied and bothered them until they gave me a job. And about a year later, was an assistant manager there, and just kind of learned how to run the place for several years until I eventually ended up taking over with my fiance. So it was really just supposed to be like a cool job. And not, I had no idea. If you had told me in 2012 that it was a possibility that I could own the store, I would have been like, what do I know about owning a store? But I know a lot now.
Yeah, well, that actually works because what I was going to ask next was just like, what are some challenges that you face running a store?
So there's a couple things that I think people don't really think of, or maybe don't consider when they think about running a store and stuff. I get a lot of people who are like, oh, that seems like such a cool job, and it definitely is. I mean, I love it for sure. One of the biggest challenges is actually just keeping good stuff in stock. We sell used games, and there's not like a distributor of used games, and especially not retro games. There's not like a company I can call up and be like, give me 30 more copies of Mario Kart 64, and so I really, really, of course, I don't want to disappoint any customers. They come in and they're really excited to pick up a game that they had in their childhood, or a game they've been hearing about, or they saw on YouTube or something like that. And when we don't have it, I feel really bad about it. But it's tough. It's very tough to kind of continue to tap this finite resource, especially when a bunch of people are holding on to them either for a collection or like it's just sitting in someone's garage somewhere. So you have this finite resource that can be kind of difficult to work with. So a lot of my job is finding creative ways around that, because we can't just rely on people selling stuff to the store. That's where we get a lot of stuff, but I'll go to conventions and I'll try to buy out people's collections. And then one of the other things we do is we try to make import stuff as accessible and friendly as possible, which is something that I've been working on with the store for several years, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of it now. But basically, Japan doesn't have quite the same problem that we do over here, where this stuff is super expensive and can be hard to get your hands on, and not every store is going to have a copy of Mario Kart or Zelda or whatever. In Japan, they don't really have that problem. It's just not really as big of a retro game scene there. So while there are retro game stores, they basically always have all the good stuff in stock, and it's still pretty cheap. So I try to make, as much of that stuff accessible to our local customers, obviously, first of all, by importing it, but second of all, by kind of educating them on like how they can play a lot of the import titles. There's stuff that is never going to be super accessible. I mean, a game like Pokemon has a ton of text in it. It's not going to be an easy thing to play if you don't speak Japanese, but there's a lot of games for like the Super Famicom, which is the Japanese Super Nintendo, or for the Nintendo 64, where there's just like really not hardly any text in it. And it's way cheaper. Like if we don't have, I don't know, Kirby 64 in stock for the Nintendo 64, which is like a $20 or $25 game for a US copy. We do have a $10 Japanese copy of that game and there's basically zero text in the entire game. You can absolutely play it even if you know zero Japanese. And so we try to make that stuff accessible. We'll mod systems so that they can play other region games, usually for free if it's an easy mod, like for the Nintendo 64 or the Super Famicom. So yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is just trying to get people the games they want. That's the one I'm always trying to solve.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I mean, I visit like every once in a while I'll visit like pretty much stores like this. Mostly when I was in Arizona for a bit, I went to a place pretty regularly. And yeah, I was always really impressed with like, how are people always able to like have all of these games here? Because like, I know if I had it, I wouldn't be like just selling it somewhere, you know? So it just seems like a really tough task to be able to have some sort of stock of stuff that people are looking for, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. And I didn't realize that like you could mod the N64 so easily, because now I'm going to want to look into that.
Yeah, it requires a really cheap like specialty screwdriver. It's called a 4.5 millimeter game bit and a pair of pliers, and that's all you need.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that and learn, because I've always wanted to just like revisit that original Animal Crossing on N64.
Yeah. That's actually a really popular one when we have that one in.
Oh, nice.
A lot of times people really want to pick that one up just because they're like, oh my god, this game came out on Nintendo 64. I gotta try it. I gotta see it. And you know, I'll tell them, I'm like, it's the same thing as the GameCube one, just with less stuff, and also it's all in Japanese. They're like, I don't care, I want to see it.
Yeah, that's true. That's how I feel about it.
But no, I mean, I have a copy of the game too. I totally understand.
Yeah. So I guess what is like the most rewarding thing about like working at Pink Gorilla and running that store?
Oh, definitely the most rewarding thing about being your own boss is the freedom. It's really, really nice that I'm able to, you know, take time off when I want to take time off. I can go to conventions when I want to go to conventions. Maybe that's not quite the answer you're looking for, but I mean,
No,
I also really like just being a part of the retro game community and especially the Seattle community and helping people. It's cool when we get people who, you know, who have been shopping with the store for, I've been with the store for like 7 years now, so it's cool to see like there's still some of the same people I knew 7 years ago shopping with us.
Oh.
That part's really rewarding.
yeah. Well, both of those are really awesome, because I'd love to just have more control over my schedule and go to conventions a lot more often. Cool. So I guess this is kind of like a side kind of thing, but we've seen like news about places like GameStop downsizing or closing stores. And I guess like, how do you see brick and mortar changing in the years to come?
Well, I think it's going to be tough for a lot of stores to adapt. But that being said, I mean, I don't think that we're at a point yet where, you know, it's doom and gloom and digital's taking over completely and no one's going to want any physical games anymore. I just think, you know, a good store, a really healthy store is going to kind of be on top of it and figure out other ways to kind of diversify what they're doing and still keep it interesting. So, for instance, we sell a lot of imported merchandise. We get a bunch of like Japanese plushies and keychains and that sort of thing. You guys have probably seen in Japan, they do like these gachapon machines where you pay a couple bucks and you get like little keychains or figures. And they do this for so many series, but then also for just random cute stuff too. But they'll be like, you know, a bunch of like little different colored squids from Splatoon on a keychain, or different like Dragon Ball Z characters and that sort of thing. So we carry a lot of that, which is interesting because you can't really get it anywhere else because it's Japanese.
Right.
It's related to people's interests if they're shopping in there. And so I think part of it certainly is going to be diversifying. And I don't know if GameStop's going to be able to quite pull that off. We'll see. You know, they did some stuff with they acquired ThinkGeek and they've been selling more merchandise and stuff in their stores. But some of it, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like a lot of it's just kind of lame. Like, I don't really want like a puzzle for Five Nights at Freddy's or something like that. You know? Who's asking for that? So yeah, merch, but interesting merch. And then yeah, just cultivating sort of the hardcore community, which I think is still going to be around. There's always going to be people who want to continue to collect video games, and so maybe it'll skew a little bit more that way in the future and be less of the casual audience. But if you're staying smart and staying on top of it and experimenting with some new stuff with your local customers, I think there's still going to be room for retro game stores in the future.
Yeah, especially like, you know, there's so much stuff that it's so hard to find sometimes, and you really just have to go out to a retro game store to find it. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then it's funny you mentioned like a puzzle, because I think I think GameStop had like seasonal puzzles for Animal Crossing.
I know, I have 2 of them, but I'm never going to open them or do anything with them.
Yeah, I'd probably open them. I like a good puzzle. I guess a jigsaw, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there was somebody on our Discord who every time the new one came out, they like posted a picture. They're like, I got it. So,
Nice. Well,
yeah,
I don't think there's anything wrong with puzzles specifically. I just think there's a whole lot of stuff out there that's like not reflective of the audience that is trying to get it. Like, so GameStop had a few of their own published games, like Song of the Deep and stuff like that, and they really tried to push merch hard for that, and I didn't understand who was buying that. It's like, this is a GameStop published game. Like, I don't think there's people who want a bunch of figures of this game that you're publishing. Like, you're not Nintendo, you don't have the like push behind you where people are going to be really interested in the characters. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting experiment. I don't think they're wrong for trying, but some of those decisions I was like, really don't think you need a Song of the Deep puzzle. I don't think anyone's buying that.
Yeah, and that explains like the 2, I don't know, 3. How long did they push that? Because I remember like maybe like 2 years I'd walk into GameStop and they just like constantly had those posters up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's really awesome. I really love the, I guess, background that you have into that world. Because I mostly see it like, I don't know, every like maybe once, twice a year when I'll go into a store, or when I go into conventions too. I like seeing a lot of the retro gaming stuff there. So it's really cool to get your background on it. So let's actually hop into the Video Game History Foundation, which you are now co-director of. That's very awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, so I want to start by asking you, like, when did your love for video game history start?
So this has actually not been like a lifelong thing for me. I've always really liked learning, but I didn't really understand that I had a love of researching until pretty late in my life. I would say not till I was like 18 or 19. And it started, believe it or not, with a Super Nintendo game called Packy and Marlon. Have you ever heard of that game?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, so it is a Super Nintendo game, and it's about diabetes. It's a platformer where you learn to manage your diabetes by like eating fruit and giving yourself insulin and answering quiz questions and stuff. And for whatever reason, when I was 18 years old and I first learned about this game, something just like went off in my head, and I was like, oh my god, games can be so weird. This is so interesting. I need to just, what else is out there? What else weird stuff is out there? So that was like the moment where I decided that I was going to just start researching stuff. And I did. And I got really into, the first couple times I attempted to research things, I did a lot of the really surface level stuff. I mean, I was a little bit smarter than knowing, Wikipedia is not the end all be all of, of research, but, I got better and better at it as I went, and found that it got really, really hard if I wanted to do substantial research, that it was just absolutely scattered to the four winds. I've done research at the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester. I had to fly out on a plane to Rochester, New York, and go to their library and have their like archivists pull certain boxes with design documents in them and certain magazines and that sort of thing. I do a bunch of research on like the Internet Archive, if you're familiar with that. Where it's sort of an archive. It's got its problems, but it's still the best source of like anything. It's just crawled the web for the last I don't know, since the early 2000s or late 90s, and tried to take an image of all of of what websites looked like back then. So you can kind of go to websites that are now defunct, see stuff that hasn't been active. If you were to go to the website now, it looks completely different. All that stuff is completely vanished. And so I found a lot of stuff through that, but and gone to local libraries and used online databases and stuff. I mean, it's just, there's a whole lot of information out there that is just absolutely not centralized whatsoever. And I find it really fun. So that's sort of where that all started.
Yeah. So then I guess, how did that lead you to, I guess, the Video Game History Foundation?
So a couple different things, a couple different stars aligned for that to happen. I was at a time in my life where I was extremely frustrated. This is about 2.5 years ago when the Video Game History Foundation was first founded. I was extremely frustrated with just how difficult it had gotten to do my research. And I just happened to come across this brand new foundation that just sprung up out of the blue. And read about it and was really interested in kind of what they were doing, which was basically trying to make my life easier as a researcher. It's like, let's find all of this stuff. Let's save all of this stuff. Let's make it more accessible. Let's allow people to, not have to spend years learning how to become a really good researcher to find anything. Let's get it all public. Let's get companies on board with it. Let's get them cool with the idea that people should be studying this stuff, and let's get more cool stories about video games out there. So at the time, what I thought I wanted to do with my life was like PR and marketing for the game industry. I'd already done a little bit of it. I worked for a local marketing company here, and we had done like some conventions for a couple smaller game studios and a couple of like entertainment acts and stuff. And I was in like a pretty junior position, so I was mostly just booking things and writing some of the copy and that sort of thing. But I liked it, and I was like, okay, this is probably what I'm going to do with my life. I can go be in the game industry, but I don't have to actually make a video game, because I don't think I ever want to make a video game. So I was like, okay, well, this is a brand new organization. What is my skill set? I can do PR. So I reached out and I was like, let me do your PR for free. I just want to be involved because I think this is a really cool organization, and it will, as it grows, it's just going to be more and more helpful for me as a researcher. And founder Frank Spaldi actually kind of blew me off at first, and I don't blame him, because who am I? I was just some random person saying I'll do free PR. But I just kept kind of showing up and doing stuff, and I just delivered a big stack of PR materials to him for no reason whatsoever, and he was like, okay, you're serious. Then I just started being involved in some of the smaller projects we were doing. I think that maybe it wasn't that same year, but shortly after that, we did like the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. We helped them set up their museum, which we did again last year, and then we're doing it again this year. And just starting to be involved in some of the smaller projects like that, and that's really how I got started. But yeah, I mean, the stars kind of aligned with me being in a place where I could do some free PR, and I just found out about it at the exact time I was pissed off about how difficult research was.
Yeah, and that's always a good reason to get into something. Like, you're just like, you find something that's really annoying, and you're like, how do we fix that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really love how you like kind of bounced into that, though. It's kind of like, for me professionally, like, not doing podcast, not that I do podcasting or YouTube videos professionally, but like professionally, I'm like a copywriter in marketing, right? And so most of the reason I fell into this was kind of that same thing, where I was like, I really like cartoons. I was looking at positions at like Frederator Studios or something, and I was like, how do I get one of those jobs that are there but doesn't involve me making a cartoon, because I probably can't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
I just want to be around this stuff, but don't make me make it.
Yeah, because like sometimes you don't really have to be able to make it. You just have to like care about it being made. And that's a good reason to work somewhere, I think.
Exactly.
So, I guess thinking about the foundation and everything, like, what are your goals working with them? I guess both as the foundation itself and individually.
So, our big mission is basically that we want storytellers to have the tools that they need to tell the stories of video games. And that can manifest in a lot of different ways. The way I like to think about it is like, I don't know if you've ever been to a bookstore and seen their video game section. If they have one at all, it's probably just like Minecraft and Fortnite books, and there's not any actual like
Oh,
books written about video games. I mean, there have been some, but there's very little out there, especially when you go look at like books about musicians and that sort of thing. I mean, everything else is being studied a lot. And so we're just trying to, the ultimate goal is to just promote way more of that sort of thing, way more research, more
mm,
exciting stories. We want people to celebrate and appreciate video games and learn about them. So obviously, just growing the foundation, and a big part of it is just sort of getting the industry on board with this idea that video games should be studied and celebrated. And that, I don't think there's anyone who individually is like, no, I disagree with that. But it's a very secretive industry. So part of what that means is like, no, but like actually, you should let people access these materials. You should actually talk to them. You shouldn't be so secretive and closed off, and
yeah.
you should, be more open. Um, every movie, like movie directors will walk you through all of their decisions, and they'll talk about cut stuff and that sort of thing. And video games play their cards very close to their chest, and they don't like to talk about that
Yeah.
stuff. So those are two pretty big things we're working on. Um, Individually, I mean, to be honest, like I already co-direct it. My focus is definitely more on growing the foundation than growing myself at this point. So yeah, just getting to do more. Ultimately, it'd be cool if I got to just do research, and get paid to do that. But that's pretty far off, and I'm definitely more focused on growing the foundation first and foremost.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really awesome. And that now makes me want, like, I remember I loved getting DVDs in the past, mostly just the ones that had like commentary, like a commentary version. So I
Yeah,
can listen to people talk about like what went on making like any one scene or any choices they made through that process. So it'd be cool to like watch a video game get played
Oh,
while the developers are actually talking about like their decisions and all that went through making any like one sequence to a game, you know?
yeah, I love that so much. And there've been a couple of studios and individual directors and stuff who have gone and done stuff like that, but it's very rare, and we definitely want it to be a more widely accepted thing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
if they do, it's probably many, like sometimes even decades after the game is out, sort of like as an anniversary celebration.
Yeah,
But it should be
totally.
more of a common thing, like a couple of years, maybe just one or two.
Yeah, or even released alongside it, like
Oh
it
yeah,
would be
yeah.
so cool if there was just more, if the people who created video games were more interested in, kind of letting people peer behind the curtain.
Hmm. Yeah, and I really do like that you said specifically the word rare, because the most recent occurrence of this that I saw was, I think, Platonic Games that made Ukulele. They went through like each of their levels and talked about that development process. And I think each level was like an hour to 2 hours long of them talking about it.
Oh wow.
And I was
That's so
really
cool.
happy to watch that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so, and I bring the connection with Rare there because it is
Oh, I
folks from Rare
I
back
get
in the
it. That's funny.
day. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I guess in case there are any like listeners out there who are interested in this type of work, interested in video game history, like I guess what would your recommendations be for how they can become involved or start getting into that world more?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like little things you can be doing, but it's such a disorganized world out there right now that, that's something we want to work on and address at some point. I wish I had like here's exactly how you can volunteer with us and jump right in. But I don't quite have that lined up yet. But there's a lot of little things you can do. If you work in the industry, especially, start saving your stuff. You don't have to necessarily do maybe you work for a big company and they're not going to let you do live streams, or, you're under NDAs and stuff. And so I don't expect you to try to break the mold yourself necessarily, but at least save your stuff. Maybe even just jot down your thoughts about things as you're developing them. Someone is going to find that really useful in the future. If you're just a fan, even just blogging and taking photos and that sort of thing, and just kind of getting your thoughts out there. These are all things that people in 50 years are going to really need to sort of understand what people were feeling about the game at a single time. What was the atmosphere around it like, and that sort of thing. And then more practical stuff. You can always scan stuff. You can scan, any if you got some magazines and that sort of thing. The Internet Archive is always willing to host that stuff. The Internet Archive in general is a really great resource for just putting anything you have up there. There's a site called Redump, where if you want to get into dumping your personal copies of games, so that there's just kind of more what do you call that? Redundancy out there, so that we know that it's a good, clean copy of things, and we fully understand what the game is out there. There's all these just little avenues. I don't expect anyone to become a full-blown researcher, but yeah, just the more people we have talking about the stuff and sharing it, and saving these little pieces, taking photos and videos at conventions. Those have been super helpful for piecing together mysteries when we come back to things later. So all of those things are helpful, and any little bit you can do definitely helps.
Yeah, and I really like what you mentioned about, I guess, kind of remembering how people felt about a game during a given time, when it came out and everything. I guess the biggest example for me in that case is remembering how people felt when Wind Waker came out.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Knowing that had kind of a negative reaction to it, being very much the art style behind it, And then now people look back at that game pretty fondly, and so yeah, it's really cool to capture what the perspectives were at a time, Yeah,
I think especially if you're a younger person and weren't around for that, that could be that context could be completely lost on you now. People thought Wind Waker looked really bad and really stupid, and of course now it's been remade. It's had HD remakes and everyone likes it. But yeah, exactly. That's a great example of that.
Yeah. Well, this is really cool. So, where can people go to support the Video Game History Foundation?
So we've got a Patreon that's got several different tiers. At the $10 level, you can join our really cool Discord, where we're all huge nerds and we talk about video game history all day. And then, really any amount helps, of course. You can also just make straight donations on the website, gamehistory.org. And hopefully I'll have some more actual volunteer work that we can start letting people have, because I get emails all the time that are how can I do stuff, and I'm I don't have anything for you yet, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So look forward to more of that. Join our mailing list, and if you can do it, of course we would love the support on Patreon.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that there are already people that are just want to help and want to do something. And it's exciting because it's something that's new and it hasn't really been done to this extent. And it's good to have that idea that there are a lot of people backing this project for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been a good amount of support out there. I think there's so many people who believe in what we're doing, and it's up to us now to kind of figure out how to organize it best and make sure that we're making the best use of all of this enthusiasm.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go ahead and hop into New Horizons, which is, as we all know, the new Animal Crossing game coming out early next year. Not early enough, but early enough. Early next year. We'll leave it at that. So I did see some of your, I guess I saw a tweet that was kind of your initial impression of seeing the game. And I think what you said was something along the lines of this doesn't really look like Animal Crossing, you're a bit worried, you know? So can you take us through your initial impressions of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know this is going to be very controversial, but so let me start with a funny story. I was very, very nervous for this E3 announcement because I was
Oh.
like, I'm pretty sure they're going to talk about it. Oh my God, we haven't heard anything. What the heck is it going to be like? And I was just so nervous because, it's been years and years since we've had an Animal Crossing game. I went to bed. I had a nightmare that night that they were going to introduce crafting, and I woke up and I woke my fiance up, and I was like, oh my God, I just had the funniest nightmare that they're going to introduce crafting in Animal Crossing. Haha, they would never do that. That would be so silly. And of course, as you know, that's like the first thing they showed. So, and I, obviously nightmare is a really strong word, but I've been doing a lot of research on Animal Crossing in general for a project I'm working on right now that can't talk about yet. But yeah, so I think before I get too deep into this, people are probably going to say that I'm like reading too far into this, that I'm taking it too seriously, that, I'm definitely being a critic here. And I respect that. I think that's probably, not super far off the mark, but I just want to be honest about what Animal Crossing means to me and really what makes it different than all of the other life sim type games. I mean, I love Harvest Moon. Tons of people love Minecraft and Stardew Valley and all of these other games and stuff. They're all fantastic games in that same kind of general genre. But to me, Animal Crossing has always been pretty separate from all of those. And this game made me feel like it's not so separate. And I'll explain. So, one of the things that makes Animal Crossing different to me than other life sims is that you don't have any sense of like playing God. You're really, in previous games, you're really like forced to just kind of assimilate and live within the rules of this game, within this community. Your voice isn't really like any more important than any of your neighbors' voices. That's maybe not as true in New Leaf, where you had some like mayor power, but in general, it was like you can make some decisions, you can plant flowers and that sort of thing, but you can't just like move things around. You can't just change the whole town. That you don't have that power. You just live in this town. It's kind of like real life. You got to learn to live within some of those limitations and carve out like the perfect place for you without taking total control and making it like a dollhouse is the way I kind of describe it. So it's more like, rather than having a dollhouse, it's more like having an aquarium. It's like there's still fish and stuff that have to live here. There's rules you have to adhere to, because fish need certain things to live, and there's only so much creativity you can have, but you can still get pretty creative within those confines. So that's the difference to me. Maybe that's a weird analogy, but that's the one I like to use. So in this game, in New Horizons, specifically in this last direct they had, a couple things really stuck out to me, which the first one was that you could put a tree in your pocket. Like, so to me, what that says is like, even a tiny decision like where to plant a tree, like you don't even have to think about it anymore. Because if you mess up, you just put the whole tree in your pocket, just move it wherever you want. It kind of takes the weight out of some of your decisions. And it makes it feel like a lot more arbitrary to me. And again, I know this is getting like kind of philosophical and stuff, rather than just being like, it's a game, come on, just have fun with it. But that, and of course, they mentioned something about how if you don't like where your neighbors want to move, you can just move them. All of these things to me feel like you have an awful lot of power, and your neighbors are more like kind of props in your like perfect Barbie dream island than like having a real living, breathing community. You might totally disagree with that, but that's the feeling that I get out of it. And I still think it's going to be a fantastic game. I still think it looks gorgeous. The dialogue, of course, is going to be great. The building, like there's still going to be a lot of things that are super fun about it. I just think it doesn't feel like the things that made Animal Crossing different to me than some of these other life sims, I feel like have kind of gotten blurry a little bit with New Horizons.
So I forget how many episodes ago it was now, but it was a fairly recent episode, but we did actually talk about some unpopular opinions that we had about Animal Crossing. And one of them that I highlighted was that I like that villagers just move in and you don't have control over it.
Yeah, totally.
I recognize the annoyance for sure, but I feel like I don't want to trade that for just the randomness and like you having to accept that you can't control everything in the game, you know?
Yeah, and not that I feel like every game should be like preaching to you or anything like that, but I feel like it's kind of a cool like parallel to the real world. It's like all right, look, in life there's, not everything's going to be perfect, and you're just going to kind of have to learn to live with some things that you don't necessarily like. So, I mean, everyone has a story of an Animal Crossing neighbor that they hated, but you just kind of like, that's like part of life, is you just have to learn to be around people. It's not always about surrounding yourself with the most perfect stuff and making everything this like beautiful dollhouse that's perfect. It's learning to be like, okay, you know what? I don't love where this guy's house is, but let me find a creative way to make this still look good. Or I don't like this cranky villager, but he's starting to grow on me a little bit, And if we had too much control, I think no one would ever get creative and experimental with those kind of things, or learn to accept, learn to get interested in something they weren't formerly interested in.
Yeah. And speaking of neighbors as well, like I still really like that, your best friends can just move away too.
Yeah.
I think that's like a big lesson to learn from the game, which I mean, a lot of people feel upset when they have to learn like a lesson and feel actual sadness when something changes that they're so attached to, but I think it's good. It's important. And I feel like it's a fun, unexpected kind of thing that you get out of the series. And, in case you were worried about how people were going to take it, we have covered this game a lot, but I've actually been pretty surprised at how a lot of people were very open about how they felt about crafting and just like the game when they first saw it in general. Like there was negative reactions while I was streaming and watching it myself too. I know Sergio was kind of quiet, but he was like, I'm not quite sure what this is yet.
Yeah, I think that was definitely, I heard you guys have talked before about like maybe they should have had that treehouse stuff first or something, because I think that did help some people.
Yes.
Because that first trailer was a little confusing. But yeah, not a big fan of the crafting thing, because rather than it being a kind of a game of luck and patience and just again learning to like live in a living, breathing world that sometimes you just gotta wait for stuff, and sometimes you gotta just get creative or get lucky. Now it's like, well, now you can just kind of grind it out, right? Like just keep pulling weeds, keep hitting rocks or whatever. You can just play for 8 hours and grind it out, and that really goes against like even what the original directors of the game like to say about it. They used to, in interviews and stuff, they'd always be like, we hope you play for like 30 minutes a day. That would be perfect. And I'm a little worried that this is a game that's going to encourage like grinding and playing for 8 hours a day if you want to get anything done.
I mean, I feel like I end up doing that regardless.
Sure, but I'm more so that like you have to at this time to get stuff done, if you want to like actually get the furniture rather than playing for 30 minutes and being like, oh well, I'll check again tomorrow. It's like, or I could play for another 9 hours and grind it out.
Yeah, and that is pretty funny too, because I know a lot of people run into wishing there was more with the game, or maybe like things become too routine, too kind of chore-like,
Sure.
And I've always kind of personally really liked when I get to that point in Animal Crossing where I check in like once a day, and it's, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour or so, and then I'm done. Like, I'm completely happy with what I did, and I can't wait to check in tomorrow, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was one of my big complaints with Pocket Camp when it first came out, because I was like, this is, surprisingly enough, I feel like I'm playing this, or have to play this more than I would a regular Animal Crossing game, because everything changes
definitely.
every 3 hours, and if you don't check sometimes, maybe you didn't do enough in this fishing tournament, or maybe you didn't do enough with your gardening event, you know? So I just feel like the Pocket Camp has been surprisingly more demanding than a mainline Animal Crossing, so I I don't know. I guess I hadn't seen the crafting that way. But now I'm just like, I hope there's enough of that random everyday stuff where like you can't just power through it. You have to be patient and wait, because that's always been a beautiful thing to me with Animal Crossing, that it just doesn't come all at once. You have to spend the time with it to get there.
Yeah. And I think maybe people don't realize that that is a major factor in what makes it such a like relaxing game, is that you like you might be disappointed that you don't get something right away, but like you can't change it, so you just kind of make peace with it, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll find other things to do and I'll come back again tomorrow. But I think if they if they kind of dangle the reward too close to your face, it's gonna make people feel like more stressed out about the game and make them feel like they have to work harder to get at those things, rather than accepting that it's okay to just wait and be patient and stuff. So the game's not out yet. I could be totally wrong, and it could still, the crafting could be like a fairly minor part of it, but it doesn't seem that way. And I hope I'm not like, I don't say all this stuff because I want to be negative. This is my favorite series, and I love it so much, and I'm still going to play the heck out of this game. But I have some concerns.
Yeah. So you also did mention like, the treehouse stuff helped a little bit. So I guess outside of your initial reactions, how are you feeling about the game now?
I mean, that's pretty much still where I'm at. I don't feel like they've shown, I don't feel like they've really addressed my concerns, and I don't think they probably will, because I think in general, I've been talking about control and that sort of thing, and I think most people disagree with me. I think most people do just want more control, and they do want to like just focus on the sort of like the happy home designer elements of it. They really just want to make things look really pretty and really perfect, and that's perfectly valid way to enjoy the game. And I think that maybe that's like a wider audience, and that's why they're going that direction. It's more people are more into that part of it than they are into the like the like philosophical ways that Animal Crossing affects you, and the lessons it teaches you, and that sort of thing. And I get it, so I don't hold any ill will against them or anything, but I kind of have a feeling that the game is more for that group of people and less for me. Not that I'm not going to love it and play it, but I don't think there's anything they've said that addresses those things for me.
Yeah, and it does seem like they've basically said the same thing a couple times, with both of like what they showed at E3 and then the most recent kind of trailer in that direct. So, I'm kind of wondering like what else they're revealing, what else is going to be part of the game and everything. So, yeah, there's still a lot to see. So hopefully it gets addressed in some way for you. But yeah, like you said, like, I just can't not play an Animal Crossing game. I've been playing.
Of course not.
People ask me every month, like, why am I doing this to myself as I stream Amiibo Festival? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm having fun with it.
Still Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
That's why I'm playing Pocket Camp.
Yeah, exactly. You can't help getting those little critters in your life. Cool. I guess outside of that, like I feel like we heard some of your worries and everything, but what excites you about this new game?
Well, the major thing is that the communication parts never looked better. with just the sheer amount of people that are going to be able to play it once. I'm sure the online connectivity is going to be amazing. I bet it's going to be just better than ever for sharing stuff with people. That sort of like show and tell thing that you mentioned earlier. On top of that, obviously the game looks gorgeous. It like that's exactly what I wanted an Animal Crossing game to look like graphically. You know, it's just really beautiful and serene, and I think it looks really nice. So there's still definitely some positives in there. I have some hopes and stuff too. Like I hope they introduce some more villager types, and I'm sure there'll be some more special characters. There's all kinds of things that I'm excited about that are sort of like yet to be seen. But from what we have seen, definitely just the way the world looks and the potential of the communication stuff.
Yeah. Last, maybe it was a couple weeks ago or so, but Sergio and I were talking about just how surprised we were that we haven't really seen any new characters yet. So we're definitely hoping for that too.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. So then I guess we have some miscellaneous questions for you. But I wanted to focus a little bit on your Animal Crossing collection. And I guess I wanted to ask you, like, what is your most prized possession in that collection?
This is an easy answer because I have an original copy of Dobutsu no Mori, the Animal Crossing on Nintendo 64, complete in box, and it is signed by Hisashi Nogami, who is, of course, the game's who's the game's co-director, and he still works on the games today. He also directs Splatoon and that sort of thing. So that is definitely my most prized possession. He even drew Bob on it. He signed his name and drew a little Bob face on it. So that's very proudly displayed in my collection, and a really cool opportunity for me to meet him. He doesn't speak any English, but I had a friend of mine who translated for us, and had like a short, just like, oh, you're a big Animal Crossing fan, thank you, and that kind of conversation.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So I had kind of a similar-ish follow-up. It might be the same question, might be a different answer, I don't know. But if you could just keep one item from your Animal Crossing collection, would it be that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I think it would be. I mean, I want to keep my copies of the game that I can play, because the Japanese one, I've popped it in, of course, but I don't have like a running town on it because Animal Crossing's not really Animal Crossing without understanding the dialogue. So
yeah. So what about with your entire video game collection? Because I'm sure I've seen you have a lot of different things, and so with that. With keeping your whole collection in mind, is there something that you would keep over that?
Gosh,
if you could only keep one thing.
That's a really tough question. I mean, that one's at least in my top 3. And the other 2 aren't even like really video games, but they're in my collection and they sort of count. So the other 2 things that I would put at like the most important for me. Maybe there's 3 more. I still have my Game Boy Color that I've had since I was a kid. That's like the only thing that's survived from when I was a kid. So that one's important to me. I have an Ultra Hand, a Nintendo Ultra Hand, which is a toy they made, all the way back in 68, I want to say. I can't remember the exact date, but it's Gunpei Yokoi, who made the Game Boy and the Game & Watch and a bunch of other stuff at Nintendo. That was his first, that was the first thing that he created that Nintendo actually put out for sale, and was a huge success. And it's like was a $5 toy that, because it's vintage and very important, it cost me like $250. But it's really cool to have in my collection. And then the last thing, this is the weirdest thing, and I'll try to make this explanation short, but it was the thing I've been after basically for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I collect for the Bandai WonderSwan, which is a handheld console that was only released in Japan and some parts of Korea and Asia and stuff. And so there is this really, really rare version of the WonderSwan that comes with a scale and a program, and it's called Mama Mite. It's for tracking your pregnancy. And I think I told you towards the beginning that I, have been really inspired by like, wow, video games can be so weird. I'm really into this stuff. So, as far as I know, there have only been 3 found in the world ever.
Oh, wow.
So I've had, I thought I would go my whole life without seeing one of these, but I had an auction alert set up on Yahoo Auctions, which is where I buy all my Japanese stuff. That's what they use instead of eBay, basically, in Japan, is a site called Yahoo Auctions. Mm-hmm. And popped up, and I bought it like instantly. And that was super cool. So I'm actually working on researching that one right now so that I can talk about it, because it's very, very unknown.
Right, nice.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Those are all really cool things. So you do a lot of amazing things. What is kind of like your background, and what advice would you have for people looking to achieve their own goals?
So, my background, I went to high school in Texas. I did well enough to get into the University of Washington, which is a pretty decent school. And I went into communication and business, and I've just always been working my whole life. Like, as soon as I turned 15, I was trying to find jobs, and always had like a side hustle, like I used to like draw things for people for money, and just always been really like focused on doing something productive and trying to make money and that sort of thing, which is funny because now I'm a lot less focused on the money part of it with a nonprofit. But so when I was in college, I just started trying to get myself out there. I guess I should back up a little bit. In high school, I decided that the restaurant I worked for needed a social media presence, because this is not at like the very beginning of social media taking off or anything, but like, Twitter was just kind of starting out and that sort of thing. And I was like, you guys should have like a Facebook page and a Twitter. And they let me run that when I was like 17. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to do like PR and, marketing and that sort of thing. So when I moved to Seattle, I was working at Pink Gorilla. Then I got a sort of side gig where I worked for a marketing company. I did like some summer internships I did one with like the New York Mets, and did sports for a little while. So kind of bounced all over the place, but basically I've just been trying to do something. Like, I've always just been really, really busy, and always trying to, get myself ahead like that. So my advice, well, I don't know if I'd advise bouncing around as much as I did, but definitely just something my dad told me a long time ago. He's like, if you just know more than everyone else and you outwork everyone else, then there's no way you can fail. And that's what I've found to be true. And it's not a life for everybody. It's not, I don't think you should have to like outwork everybody in order to succeed. You definitely don't have to, but that's always just been my like total nose to the grindstone. Like, let's just outwork everyone. Let's and I've certainly had failures all along the way. I've certainly not like been only successful, but I just work really, really hard. And my advice is, if you want to guarantee success, that's how you do it. But definitely being nice to people and meeting a bunch of people has also been really helpful for me too. Life is a lot of opportunities come out from, being friends with people and knowing some good people. So that part too. That was a little all over the place.
Well, that was awesome though. I think that's very inspiring for sure. I think that's good advice to follow for people. So I have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
I saw you got to meet Aya Kyogoku at E3 this year, who is a completely awesome person. But any fun details about that experience?
Well, the first thing I noticed is that she's my height, which was really funny because I always wear I'm 4'11" on a good day. I'm very short, and so when I go to like industry events and stuff, because people tend to sort of look at me like I'm a child otherwise, I usually wear like pretty tall heels, which I don't recommend. Like they hurt my feet and everything. It's not fun, but it's so that I'm not like, I'm not everyone in the world is towering over me. So when I met her, it was funny because I was wearing these like 4.5 inch heels, and I was like, oh my god, I'm like 4 inches taller than her right now. This is so weird. I've never been taller than anybody. um, she was super nice though. She's her English is pretty good. We were able to like talk without my translator friend for a little bit. I wasn't allowed to like interview her or anything. I really wanted to, but it was so funny because I had tried to interview Bill Trinan, who's you guys might know is worked on pretty much all the Animal Crossing games is in localization.
Mhm.
And so he knew that I had this project I was working on, and that I had talked to him about it before. And he actually did want to be involved, but Nintendo is just kind of like, we can't always, we can't always authorize every interview, et cetera, et cetera. So I understood, but he saw me talking to her, and he like kind of came over and like started hanging over. I'm like, I'm not interviewing her, I promise.
Yeah.
So that was funny.
That's amazing to me, because that is one of our dreams for this show, to just talk to anybody who has worked on an Animal Crossing game.
I heard you mention that in an episode I was just listening to, and I was like, I heard that and I was like, oh, good luck.
Yeah, no, that's why it's a dream for sure. Like, I'm sure it'll happen one day while I'm asleep. But with that in mind, like, what is something that you'd love to ask from a developer on Animal Crossing?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think the one I go to though, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the origins of the first Animal Crossing, but the very first pitch for it was nothing like the Animal Crossing we know and love today. It was like a dungeon crawler with animals in it, and it was inspired by Diablo. Katsuya Gucci was really into Diablo at the time, and so he was making like a cute, family-friendly, animal-assisted Diablo, basically, and that was his pitch. And obviously, the game changed drastically. A big part of that was because it was being developed for the Nintendo 64 disk drive, and then everything got cut from that disk drive because it performed really poorly in Japan. And they had to move it to a smaller cartridges, so they kind of rethought the entire game. So I would really love to ask him some questions about that. Does he think the game would have ever been made had he not pitched it originally like a normal quote unquote game?
Mhm.
And B, like, does he still want to make that game? Like, does he still think that game is a good idea? Like that version of Animal Crossing. So that, like, the really early stuff to me would be fascinating to hear more about.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I did not know that at all. That would be a very different game, though.
It would be, yeah. I mean, absolutely nothing like it is now, and it obviously didn't get like very far into development at all. As far as he talked about this in a GDC talk one year, I think in like 2006 or something like that.
Mhm.
But they had like design documents, and they were talking to, it had been approved. Like it wasn't like oh, this is just an idea I had. It was like, no, we're going to start developing for this, and didn't get much further than that, but still super interesting to me.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I guess the only thing we can really wait for is, I've been really happy that Nintendo's been doing their own podcast, that Nintendo Power Podcast. And
Yeah, that's been great.
so I'm just like anxiously waiting for the day they talk about Animal Crossing on that.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
which, I mean, I'm sure they will inevitably, right? Like they'll have some of these people probably on that podcast to
Right.
talk about it.
yeah, I feel like that's right now, unfortunately, the only hope we have at getting some of that developer insight.
And it's whatever the PR people think is okay to talk about.
There's just so many barriers to entry
Yeah, I
on
know.
there. It's a bummer, but maybe one day that stuff will change. Maybe people will start to want to tell the world a little bit more about like making games and their process and everything. I really hope so, at least.
I hope so too. That's definitely what we're working towards.
Awesome. Well, we have this last little segment in our show. It's called Haken's Islander Corner. Each week, we ask our patrons a question on Patreon, and they give us their answers, and we read some of them. So this week's question was, what was the biggest mistake you ever made in Animal Crossing? And Kelsey, what's yours?
Oh gosh, I did not prepare for this question, and there's so many. But I think one of the biggest ones was like not being careful in City Folk. Do you guys remember did you play City Folk on the Wii?
Yes.
Okay, so do you remember how you would, like, the grass would wear down under you?
Yes.
And it was like impossible to grow back. So I wasn't being careful at first. I was like, oh, there's no way this is going to become a problem. Like, I can see the grass wearing down a little bit, but like, it didn't take long for half of my town to just be dirt. And it was horrifying. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, my town looks awful and the bugs don't come when it's just dirt.
Oh, yeah.
So I basically was planting flowers in like every single square, and then like walking in like the most careful, like I would put down patterns and be like, okay, I can only walk on these squares. And like, that's just that's not a fun way to play the game.
Yeah, that's definitely a rough experience for a lot of people. Sergio, what's the biggest mistake you ever made?
Well, other than deleting some of my previous towns, which I still don't know why I did that. I guess I felt I was done with the games, and for some reason I thought I would never want to go back to them. But other than that, I think it was farming my second New Leaf town basically for money. I planted just perfect fruit trees, and I would use it for turnips. And basically, I got rich too quickly in New Leaf, and I felt like that kind of pushed me too far too quickly. I'm definitely gonna take my time in New Horizons. Money comes when it does, just like in real life. So I'm excited to try that approach this time.
Yeah, I can relate to that one about deleting towns because I'm still so sad about my first. Pretty much the only town that I have that was my original is my New Leaf one at this point. Oh. But I'll say I think my biggest mistake wasn't actually an in-game mistake. It's a merchandise mistake. And that was me skipping out on importing the Sanrio cards before they skyrocketed.
Me too! Those are the only ones I'm missing too.
Okay, so I lucked out. I have them now. And it's because one of our dear friends in Norway, Newt, she bought a ton of packs back when they were out. And so she heard an episode where I said I was missing them, and then she gave me a great deal on them. So
good.
Yeah, that's the only reason I have them, but that's one of my biggest mistakes with Animal Crossing. And now I've learned, I'm just like, okay, if I see it, I'm buying it.
I got lucky with the RV ones because I would have gone out and bought some packs. Those are pretty expensive now. But they came out like kind of close to Christmas, and so my fiance bought me 15 packs of them, and so I got 49 out of 50
Wow.
Nice.
just from doing that. So yeah, I'm very, very lucky that he got me 15 packs because they very quickly became impossible to find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so everybody listening, if we get lucky, if Nintendo magically decides to say, all right, New Horizons is coming out and it's amiibo compatible, might as well put these back out there. Hop on that.
Yeah,
be sure to
do it
get
immediately.
Yes, because they disappear. I may have been one of the reasons last time, because I remember specifically going into like GameStops and Toys R Us's back when that was a thing, and buying out all of them.
Yep.
So if you want to find them, luckily there are a lot of really cool places to trade as well. Essentially what I went for back when they came out was I'd get about 18 packs, because that would get me to, I think, 102 cards. I think that was the math. And then from there, I would just go on like Reddit for, I think it was the Amiibo Swap subreddit, and that where I was able to complete my collection, just trading with other people. So yeah, if that opportunity arises, don't make the mistake I made.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go ahead and read through some of these answers. Sergio, like usual, will go back and forth. And I'll start with Tab, who said, accidentally destroying hybrids. It happened more often than it should have. Apparently, my real-life clumsiness carried over into the game. Yeah, that's always a bummer, to lose your flowers. Especially ones that you have to spend extra time to get, you know? It's a rough life.
I've definitely done that.
Yeah. So our next answer is by Lake MT, and they said, I thought all turnips gained value when buried, so I buried a fortune's worth of normal turnips only for them to disappear in a few days. Never made that mistake again. That's true. At least that's one you make one time and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, but that reminds me of that red turnip in Wild World, which is really cool. Kind of some farming in Animal Crossing. Early days. Bishop Kayla said, the time was 2005. I was at my grandparents' house waiting for my mom to pick me up from work. I had been playing population growing all day and got so much accomplished. My grandparents had one of those light switches that controlled an outlet. My mom got there and went to flip the switch to turn the light on. The power to my GameCube shut off, and I lost all of my progress. I guess my mistake was not warning my mom when she walked in. That mistake was not made again. Tears were shed. I was 11.
Or saving halfway through the day.
I know, because that one does have the option to save and continue. So at least you can get a little portion of your gameplay back.
Oh, man. The next answer is by Honey Oceans, and they say, at the very beginning of the game, I sold my first perfect fruit instead of planting it and had to wait months upon months to get another. I didn't really know its importance then and just saw it was worth a decent amount more than regular fruit, so I handed it off to Reese. Months on months later, I finally got my next perfect cherry and accidentally gave it to a villager. Never had a perfect fruit tree in my town to this day. Oh, man.
Yeah, Sergio, you needed that playthrough so you didn't get too rich too soon.
Yeah.
So Grizzly Nina said, losing touch with the New Leaf best friend. We met randomly on the island and totally clicked, visited each other's towns all the time, and trusted one another to not ruin flowers or steal fruit. But we never exchanged codes or Twitter or anything. I hope she finds our Discord one day.
Oh, nice.
That's really cute. I love that one.
Yeah.
I hope they find us too, Nina.
Yeah, definitely. So, Fatastic says, my biggest mistake was hacking my New Leaf game. When I first played New Leaf, I was greedy and tempted to hack the game so that I could buy the stuff I wanted. So, I hacked my bells through a program called Power Saves. I got my bank account maxed out to buy so many things. I could even buy Tom Nook with 999 million bells. However, I also destroyed my experience of enjoying the game. I vowed to never hack my game ever again. Yes, I can relate.
That's just like what you said. Yeah,
yes.
Getting too rich too fast, it kind of takes a lot of the drive out of the game.
Yes,
what are you working for anymore?
Yeah, and even some of the playtime, which you definitely don't want to do. You want the most of it.
Yeah. So our last answer is from Dogbert, and they said, this brought back some bad memories. In my GameCube game, I was playing around with the travel data function, where you can store your character on a memory card in order to bring your memory card and character to a friend's house. And I was a little confused as to how it worked. When I was trying to get back to my town to play the game normally, it wasn't working. This resulted in me somehow deleting the travel data or town data. I still don't know how. I lost my very first GameCube town this way, and I still miss it.
Ugh, that's brutal.
Yeah, I think that's, there were a lot of people who mentioned that just losing a town, losing their, their first experience with the game, you know, it's very rough to go through. Cool. Well, Kelsey, it's been so awesome having you on. I've been very excited to have you on for a long time, and I want other people to go and find you and follow all the really awesome things that you do. So, where can they find you? Where can they find a lot of your projects and everything?
So I am on Twitter at Kelsey Lewin, KELSLEWIN. I'm also on YouTube if you want to see some of the research and stuff I've done. That's youtube.com/Kelsey Lewin. And then I don't know, follow the Video Game History Foundation. We're at Game History Org on all social media. And you can go to the website gamehistory.org.
Yeah, and I hope they do and find all of the really cool things that you do, because like I said, it's really awesome to see the research that you've done and put out there for everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Haken, an Animal Crossing podcast. Don't want the episode to end? Well, you can keep the conversation going by Nintendo switching over to our Discord. Just follow the link in the description, and you can talk with other people who love Animal Crossing as much as you do, including Sergio and me. Want to support the show in a bigger way and get your voice heard during the show? Well, you can visit patreon.com/ChewyPlaysNintendo. You can support our show with just $1, have an episode dedicated to you, get special access to a secret room on Discord, join in on the Haken Islander Corner, and even read a monthly newsletter covering all things Haken and Chewy Plays. We really appreciate the support and put your money toward great things on the show. Tuned in on YouTube, the comments are a great place to let us know your answers to the Haken Islander Corner. What was your biggest mistake you ever made in Animal Crossing? And if you dig what you hear, please KK slide over to the review section on your platform of choice. Let people know what they're missing out on. And Haken is a wild production brought to you by Chewy, Sergio, and all of our patrons. We thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great week.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.